Hello and welcome to Crucible of Words for more dedicated legacy action. Today we have a donation deck to play a Ninjas build, and this is the brew I've been sent. And it's got some interesting things in it. I haven't played Ninjas for a while, so I'm quite excited to give it another go. For those who aren't familiar, Ninjas refers to these cards. So Yuriko and Ingenious Infiltrator. Both of them can be put into play for just black and blue if you are bouncing a creature for it. That's the Ninjutsu ability. So you attack, they don't block, you put in a ninja. So this one lets you draw a card and you reveal that card and you deal damage equal to its... your opponent loses life equal to the mana value of the card you reveal. And Ingenious Infiltrator lets you draw a card. Now this says whenever a ninja you control deals damage. And this also says whenever a ninja you control deals combat damage. So the idea is that you stack up multiple ninjas and you just get ridiculous value. So we've got a bunch of ways of getting our ninjutsu creatures in. So we've got 4 Changeling Outcast, a nice unblockable creature that can guarantee a hit with a ninja. We've got 4 Ornithopter, obviously very cheap, so we can play this alongside a Ponder on turn 1 to set things up. We can attack with this, flip it, replay it, and do good stuff. But obviously these cards on their own aren't particularly good. And now we do have the synergies with the ninjas, but we need some more juice that we can squeeze from these. So we're playing 3 Retrofitter Foundry, which can turn either any of these cards into a 4/4 just right off the bat. And that can sometimes be just good enough to steamroll your opponent. You can make some extra tokens and keep them alive and just kind of do all the things you want to do, really. So because we are a blue-black deck, we've got a bunch of cantrips to help here. And we've got a bunch of counter magic. If we're drawing extra cards, we can afford to pitch Force of Will. No problem at all. Then we have ways of controlling the board in the form of Orcish Bowmasters, which obviously has a nice ability as well. But just being able to ping some little creatures can actually be quite important here. We've got Sheoldred's Edict, Fatal Push, Murderous Cut, and Dismember. So we've got the 4 quadfecta, if you will, of standout removal spells in Legacy in black, really. And then we have a couple of Brazen Borrowers, which can obviously bounce some stuff out the way. We can attack with this, turn it into a ninja, and then get to bounce something all over again, which is pretty nice. And then what I really like about this deck is a couple of Murktide Regents, because sometimes we're going to end up in a bit of an attrition game, and then we're going to end up with not much to show for it. At the end of it, our opponent's trading resources, blah, blah, blah. And then we just stick a really big creature that just wins the game. So that's something I've found with ninja decks in the past, is sometimes your creatures get a little bit outclassed in the mid to late game, whereas Murktide Regent kind of outclasses most things. So another really interesting thing about this build, in my opinion, is that we're not a Wasteland deck. So we are very low to the ground. We've got 17 lands here, a bunch of fetch lands, including the ability to play very heavily on basics if we need to. The 3 swamps is quite a lot of swamps here, so I'm curious to see how that's going to play out in our Daze deck. But we do only have 3 days, so probably less of an issue. And we are wanting to play like black 1-drops as well. So I'm, again, curious to see how that pans out. But like I said, we don't have any Wastelands in here. And the reason for doing that is so that we have more spell slots to tinker with, as well as being able to just pivot into a back to basics thing. So we don't really need to Wasteland your opponent if you're back to basics in them. Although we do have 1 Wasteland for when that's going to be an important thing. Maybe this could just be a 3rd back to basics, I'm not sure, but that's why we're playing this deck. We're going to see what I think about it and what comes up, and I'm quite excited. Other sideboards, cards, I really like some of the sideboard here. So 2 Null Rod. I like big haymakers that just stop decks, and this is definitely one of them. Some Dauthi Voidwalker is just like a big piece of graveyard hate that just sits in play and just says no to graveyard decks as long as it's around. We also have the Surgical Extraction. So we have a turn 0 piece here as well to complement our 4 Force of Will. So it might look a bit odd to have only 1 Surgical Extraction. But this is kind of going alongside our other turn 0 plays. We've got another black removal spell, Sudden Edict. We've also got ourselves a Plague Engineer to strip out opposing orcs or make sure that our creatures are big enough to get through and keep attacking, so they don't get sort of stonewalled by whatever our opponent may have. And we just got some other useful tools here, like Dress Down, Hydroblast, which is very good in the format right now, and then a little bit more to get us through some of the combo matchups in the form of Flusterstorm. So this is quite different to some of the ninja decks I've played in the past, so I'm quite excited to give it a go. I do like seeing sort of different takes on things that have been around for a while, and this certainly has got some different aspects in it. So let's just dive right in. Remember to like and subscribe, and why not drop me a message if you would like a donation deck. We can sort that out too. Alright, let's jam some ninjas. If you're looking to play Legacy on MTGO like me, why not try Card Hoarder? They're a rental service that I personally use, and I found them better than other rental services that I've used in the past. So why not give them a try? Alright, we have some interesting options here. We can remove our opponent's creature and get a ninja on the go on turn 2. So that sounds good enough to me. We've got a removal spell for a creature deck. We've got a Force of Will as just a flexible piece to interact with our opponent. Let's hope we don't just get Grief, Reanimate Griefed. All right. We might have dodged that. We have dodged that. So our opponent's going to kind of know what's up here as soon as we deploy something. The Ornithopter is a little bit of a tell here, especially with a land that fetches basic lands. It's not like we're playing an affinity deck or something. Should be relatively telegraphed that we're on ninjas, but our opponent might not be able to do much about that. Ninjutsu is not casting the spell either, so they can't counterspell it, but obviously it is vulnerable to removals. Alright, so we've got Volcanic Island into a Dragon's Rage Channeler. Okay. And a Wasteland. Interesting. Let's go and find ourselves a swamp here and try and fail push this. Because we're going to want to have access to 2 mana next turn. So this does play into a Daze, but we're okay with that. Right, it just worked. That's pretty exciting. We now have to decide which of these we're doing. There is also the issue of our land being wastelanded here. We kind of need to hope our opponent doesn't see it. Because they think we're on ninjas, they can just waste this before we get to put something in. So we have a choice between an Ingenious Infiltrator or a Yuriko. It's not an easy choice. I think a Yuriko getting killed isn't so bad because we might draw more copies of it because it's legendary. Right, so we're going to lose ourselves land. They could have done this earlier to avoid this ninjutsu play. Okay, we found a basic. Let's try an Ornithopter. And then next turn we can put the Ingenious Infiltrator, and then we've got double ninja triggers coming on, which is going to be pretty good into what our opponent's got going on. They only have 2 card types now. Right, we're going to see a Lightning Bolt here. Do we care about this enough to Force of Will? Is the next question. I think I do care about this one enough. Because if we just get another turn cycle of ninjaing, then we're going to be in amazing shape here. Right, they've got a Wasteland that doesn't do anything here. Our turn is going to be absolutely bananas. Also, I like Murktide Regent with the Yuriko as well for smashing 7 damage into our opponent's face. Right, let's attack with our 2 creatures. Let's ninjutsu in. Pow. So we get to draw 2 cards here. Stack them alternating. Yeah, we get to draw 2 cards and put 2 cards into our hand with the Yuriko. Right, that's why I would describe as a pretty good turn. We've got a full grip. We've got Daze, which isn't the worst here. Should give our opponent a little bit of trouble, but they can, like, if they have like a fetch land, they can put a little Murktide into play. Another Wasteland. Excellent for us. That's not a thing that actually does anything on this board. And like I said, if things go wrong from this point, we can just reload with a Murktide. Let's play our fetch land. Let's just go to attacks. So if these triggers work, we can put the triggers on, and then we can Brainstorm and just kill our opponent here. Right, so we'll do these ones first, and these on the top, and then we'll cast a Brainstorm in response. All right, so we'll put back this and this, and then Yuriko. Boom, 7. Brazen Borrower. It's going to finish them off. A classic ninja ring for our first game out. You absolutely love to see it. Let's go to the sideboard. So what is going to be useful here? Hydroblast killing the Dragon's Rage Channeler is pretty reasonable. Dauthi Voidwalker, surprisingly good in this matchup too. This is something where we could think about back to basics, but our opponent is pretty low to the ground. They can Daze and bounce their lands back, so it's not going to do that much work. Plague Engineer is an interesting one. We put on Human or Orc if they are on the Grixis build, and we can jam some stuff out of our opponent. I don't hate the Sudden Edict here either. Just a bit of removal. So we've got a lot of options of things that are playable here. We need to decide what isn't playable. How useful is the Daze going to be on the draw against a really low to the ground deck? Not very, is my take on that one. So we'll bin off these Dazes. Then we want to keep our removal chugging along. So I think I'm kind of interested in trimming on some of our enablers, because our opponent's going to be proactively shooting these, which isn't the worst for us because, you know, we're getting removal out on creatures that are objectively quite poor, but we kind of need them to do our thing. And we're obviously keeping all of our removal in. The Bowmasters is good here. I think the Borrower is fine, but I don't necessarily know if we need 2 here. We're just bringing in stuff that's better than the Borrower, really, aren't we? Let's do a quick blue count. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 22. Plenty of blue cards. I think this is pretty reasonable. So we can attack on multiple different ways here. You know, we can have the Retrofitter Foundry as a useful thing. Okay, what's our hand doing here? Like, we've got an answer for their first threat, and we've got some good ways of enabling our future draws. So we'll keep this one and see if we can get there. The basic to play on is obviously very nice, and we're just going to be playing on nothing but basics this game. So we blank our opponent's Wastelands. They might have even boarded out Wastelands in this matchup, or some number of them, which is something that not enough Delver players do, because sometimes the Wasteland doesn't do much. A Ponder from our opponent, sure. I chose not to shuffle, so that's fortunate for them. What are we up to, though? Probably just pondering here. We can Brainstorm next turn and get rid of a lot of these excess lands and just fix our hand. I don't mind having the Force of Will and the Bowmasters kicking around. Although the problem with the Force of Will here is that we'd have to pitch our Brainstorm. But I think it's acceptable. Orcish Bowmasters is pretty strong, so we're going to keep it like this, and we hopefully get to use our Brainstorm to fix our hand shortly. Just land go from our opponent. Interesting. So our opponent's got what is quite likely to be a reactive hand here. So what is our play? I think we play out a Prismatic Vista. We know we've got a land on top of our library. We can hold up Orcish Bowmaster things, or we can go for this Brainstorm to fix our hand up a bunch. Alright, so this is going to be a Seek the Beast here. Oh, a Brainstorm, actually. Okay. Our opponent is holding up a removal spell here. But this is a pretty nice target. A Daze. I don't think we're going to be doing anything about this Daze. I think that's acceptable. Like, if we fight over that with a Force of Will, whilst our opponent's got mana open and a full grip of cards, that seems like a recipe for disaster. So we've got a Force of Will. We'd ideally like to not have to use this turn. Dragon's Rage Channeler. This isn't our fight. We've got a removal spell for this. Plague Engineer. That is an interesting one. Doesn't play into Daze very well. I think I just want to get this Brainstorm up and running. So I think we play out this Vista. We'll go for a Brainstorm now. Try and get rid of these 2 lands in our hand. And then we can Sudden Edict this. We don't care about Daze because split second. Alright, let's put away these cards we don't want. We're going to crack this now. Our Sudden Edict is always going to hit this creature, basically. So I think we want an island here looking at our hand. Let's just Sudden Edict this. Because Sudden Edict always gets the smallest creature, so they could play something bigger, but split second. You don't get to do anything here, opponent. Alright, so we cleared the Channeler, which felt like it might have been something that they were interested in preserving, since they tapped the mana to put a Brainstorm on the stack to look for an answer. That's how I'm reading that one. A Questing Druid as a creature. That's fascinating. This is a human. Just sort of playing a slower, more mid-rangey game right now. Sorry, I had a bit of a cough there. So we could jam this Plague Engineer around a Daze. Now, if they've got a spell, they can cast it and it'll pump their Druid. Is this a fight worth having, is the question. If we Force of Will this, it's going to take a reasonable amount of our resources. I think we're probably getting rid of the Infiltrator here. Now, this creature can always trade with a Questing Druid, but it can stop other humans coming down like Delver and Dragon's Rage Channeler. Does our opponent have a follow-up? They do. An additional Force of Will. Alright. I think we're going to fire off a Brainstorm here. Let's see how this goes. Not incredible is how I would describe that. We've already played our land for the turn. Ornithopter ain't doing anything. This Dauthi Voidwalker is an awkward one as well. Yeah, I think our opponent has this game now. We picked a fight and lost. And they've got a 3/3 to start smashing around with. Yikes. Hydroblast, not really at its best right now. Okay, our opponent is the 4-color build as well, so Bowmaster is the thing we have to worry about. We've got this island we're going to hold for another Brainstorm, because it's not great. If we see a Bowmaster at end step here, that's pretty bad. Yep, so our cantrips are looking pretty poor. We know the next card... I don't think we're winning this one. I think we just save our time here. We know the next card is an Ornithopter. I just don't think we're going to beat what they got going on here. I do like how we've sideboarded. Kind of slightly tempted by back to basics. Daze is obviously better on the play here. So let's trim out these forces and bring in a Fluster and the Dazes on the play. We don't really want to be trading 1 for 1. But we also have a lot of card draw and reloads here. This is an awkward one. Because we can't Daze on turn 1. Do we realistically want to Daze our opponent's turn 1 play is the next question we have to ask. So the options are Island Ponder or Swamp Changing Outcast. I think I'm going to go Swamp Outcast here. This gives us the best high roll. But we can also just chip away for some damage. And if our opponent wants to try and answer this, you know, if they're spending a card on just a 1 mana thing that's not actually that big a deal to us. We're unlikely to want to Daze on turn 1 anyway here. A Lightning Bolt. Sure. I'm kind of believing that we can play the control game better than our opponent. That's the line we've sort of opted for here. Right, let's go and get ourselves a basic island. I think I'm going to be more careful with my fetching in terms of being able to cast Dauthi Voidwalker that we've boarded in. Right, Ingenious Infiltrator is not actually that useful. The other lands... I think we do want another land. Maybe we bury the sea and just take this and have our next 2 land drops sorted. That's pretty reasonable, I think. A Thought Seize. Sure, I don't think this is worth making them tap their Volcanic Island for. So they could take a Hydroblast if they're planning on playing a Dragon's Rage Channeler. Right, they've taken the Plague Engineer. And are playing a Ponder. We chose not to shuffle with that Ponder. Alrighty. So this turn we definitely want to try and get a Brainstorm off before our opponent can play an Orcish Bowmaster. So that's kind of step 1 for us right now. Alright, a lot of land. So we'll put back 2 lands. Oh, we knew there was 1 land on top. Right, so we can chuck those back. And crack this. Go and get ourselves an island now. We don't have to worry about potential Stifle or something weird. Because we're getting a basic, it doesn't really matter anyway. So we're holding up Daze and Hydroblast here. At some point we might be just playing Ingenious Infiltrator for 4 mana, which doesn't feel great. But it's a guy, so... A Mishra's Bauble. They get to see the top card of our library before we do. And still no play, interesting. It does feel like they've got an Orcish Bowmasters over there, which is pretty good against Ingenious Infiltrator. But hopefully we can just draw enough cards that we don't care. Okay, a land. That's not very exciting. I think we'll play out 1 land because we're going to need that to shuffle with a Brainstorm anyway. Are we deploying an Ingenious Infiltrator right now and going shields down on these? I don't think we are. I think I'd like to keep the Hydroblast available because we can always use that to protect our Infiltrator from a Lightning Bolt. We may as well wait till we have 5 mana. So we've at least got some ways of protecting it. If our opponent goes for a Seek the Beast, we can snap off a Hydroblast, and that's going to be pretty good. Counter target spell if it's red, please. Just don't want our opponent pulling away, because this can be a 3 for 1. And this matchup is going to be grindy because we've got similar tools that are going to sort of negate each other and just leave us with whatever we're left with, obviously. So, alright. Green and a blue. Just for a front-sided Questing Druid. Okay. A Channeler. Yep, that's pretty good. They're already growing their little friends. So you've got 3/3 and a 2/2. So we are behind now. Their threats are more efficient than ours when we don't have our engine going. This, on the other hand, this is a card that can actually do some work in this spot. Okay, so it's 2 mana, to make a 1/1, 3 mana to untap. So we didn't get to do all of that. Are we just making 1/1s here? We're trying to play this Infiltrator game. I think we are just holding up the Retrofitters. And we're going to take a hit this turn and then try and Ingenious Infiltrator our way to pulling ahead. But we're going to need to find some answers. We do have black removal, so that is going to be relatively clean in killing our opponent's creatures. We just need to find our removal spells, and then we should be okay. If we can get our engine up and running and they don't have anything to stop it, then it'll be close, I think. But we'll be able to get there, I think. Like, our opponent has pretty strong clock right now, and they're obviously going to have reach and things as well. Right, we're just going to take this. We don't want to give them a Orcish Bowmasters target so that they can pump their Questing Druid for 1 more point of damage. Right, let's make a guy. Okay, I think if they had Bowmasters, they would have done it in our end step there. That's why I would have done it at least. Let's go attacks. That's Ninjutsu. We can get Lightning Bolted, or we're going to draw a card here. I'm getting Lightning Bolted. No, Pyroblasted. Okay. That's pretty bad news on a scale of 1 to terrible. We are quite far behind now. We don't get to do anything with this. Alright. We can go into chump block mode, but that doesn't really work well for us. So we can make a guy, and then we can chump block it this time. Not this time. We can take the hit this time, and then next time we can chump block and then turn it into something else. Yep, so this is a hit for 6. So any spell means there's a lethal next turn. But I think we have to try and play to lines that give us a chance to win the game. Although that chance is very slim given our opponent's 3 cards in hand. Can't really crack these fetches unless we have to. Ponder is going to be pretty bad for us. If they have Bowmasters, but if they have Bowmasters, I think we just lose anyway. So here goes Ponder. Here it goes. Yikes. So they're going to maybe ping our servo token. Alright, so we get to stop them getting a 1/1 here. But some amount of this damage is already done. Retrofitter Foundry. What does that do? That gives us the 4/4 without having to crack. But then what? We could just... I think we have to go any order. We're looking for a removal spell here. Murderous Cut. We did find a removal spell. Okay. Get ourselves an island here. Untap this. Make this into a 4/4. Okay, so we've also got a Murderous Cut here. But we probably have to use the Murderous Cut on the Dragon's Rage Channeler. This is an awkward one. So we have a choice here. We can try and kill this now. If our opponent's got a spell, I guess they've got priority here, so we're going to see the spell first. A Lightning Bolt targeting us. Okay. This is also going to grow their Questing Druid, so it beats us. God, they're really not making it easy for us, are they? It's almost like they're trying to win this game. Right, so this can grow. This is going to put us to 3. And we're going to get ourselves a swamp. Let's cut this guy. Get rid of the lands here because we have a Murktide Regent in our deck. We can defend this with a Daze if they've got like a hard cast force of negation. But I imagine any interaction they're going to have is going to be a lot cheaper than that. A Daze. Yeah, and we can pay, make them pay, but then they will just pay. That is the game, unfortunately. So what happened in this game was we have an engine that we need to set up. And once it's set up, it will just overtake the game. Our opponent just has a bunch of good cards that are pretty low to the ground. So they just need one of them to beat down, and the rest of their cards can kind of do their thing. So we need pieces a little bit more than they do. And as you saw in the first game, when we set up our pieces, we absolutely bury our opponent. However, if we're in a game where they can take out key pieces, we end up in a bit of trouble. And that's just kind of what happened here. But there's no harm losing the Delver. You know, it's a very efficient deck that's going to be able to break up what we're doing relatively well. Let's go to round 2. Alright. Our opening hand requires another land. We do have ways of finding that, potentially. And it's very good if we do find it. And we've got 2 draw steps to do that. So I'm going to keep this one. We've got some emergency buttons we can use as well. An Island Ponder. So they could be the Delver builds that have the single island in. But it's statistically more likely to be a deck that runs more islands. So we could be looking at like Ad Nauseam Tendrils or like a blue-white control deck. Something like that. Alright, we found the swamp. Are we supposed to lead out on the swamp and not have access to Daze? I think so. We don't really want to Daze on this turn anyway because we want to get our engine going. So here goes nothing. Right, we're in with our terrible creature. It's going to become a good creature. Tropical Island. Up the Beanstalk. This is probably one we have to fight over. So I think I'm probably getting rid of the Brainstorm here because we're going to be drawing real cards in a sec. This way, if they fight over this with a Force of Will, they're not going to be drawing cards off of it at least. So they're going to get their engine in. Is this Bug Beans or Bant Beans? Most likely Bug Beans because that's way more popular and is just generally the better deck. So we can play off of non-basics here. Sorry, on basics. Okay, so we can go attacks here. Let's just draw a regular card here. So we've got our engine online. Our opponent's got their engine online. Our engine does actively reduce our opponent's life total though. Ponder from our opponent. Okay, they shuffle their library and then just deployed a land. Understood. So now we're in a pretty great spot here because if they try and kill this, we can just turn it into a different ninja. So they want to do this in the attack step rather than after blockers. An Orcish Bowmasters, you say? I will float a blue mana. Right, we're getting some card draw going. Right, let's play our Changeling Outcast. Let's cast a Ponder. See if we can rustle up ourselves something useful here. All these cards are genuinely great, so that's nice. I'm not sure about the Fatal Push. It might be useful. So I think we're going to put Push on the bottom, then the Brainstorm, then the Bowmasters. And then we can always access the Push if we need to. We can drop in a Yuriko next turn, as well as have an Orcish Bowmasters for our opponent's Bowmasters. Right, so we're going to see another Bowmasters. It's a pretty good one. So we're going to lose our Changeling Outcast. And this will give them creatures to block us with. Right, Brainstorm looking less useful right now. So I think we are playing out this Underground Sea that our opponent already knows about. And I think we're just attacking with our Ingenious Infiltrator here. If there's a weird situation, we can always try and Bowmasters away. I think they're just going to put one creature under the bus. Yep, just the one creature as expected. So what are we doing with our Bowmasters here? We're firing it off now. I think we probably are. Alright, our opponent's firing off a Brainstorm. Like, we can try and catch them, but I don't think that's a great strategy, to be honest. Like, we're going to get value just from playing the Bowmasters, which will remove their Bowmasters. Changes the way that future cantrips work out for our opponent. We in? Another Brainstorm, sure. Right. They're using these Brainstorms suboptimally because they're much worse with the Bowmasters in play. So that's pretty good for us. So we are quite far ahead on board. Our opponent does have their engine up and running. They're going for the Wasteland here. That's not a problem. We've got another land in hand. Our opponent's reducing their own mana they have available, which is good for the purposes of our Dazes and things. A Fatal Push on our little friend here. Our opponent cannot cast Orcish Bowmasters here. So we're going to play a Brainstorm in response. Okay, these cards are all good. We want the land. I guess we don't need a second Yuriko, so we'll put that on top to shuffle away. Yep, we can lose our Ingenious Infiltrator, but we can bounce our Orc Army token. Let's get a Yuriko in. We could go and get a basic or a non-basic here. So we could Ponder or we could hold up a Fatal Push. I think I would rather Ponder first. And then maybe we can set up something really gross with our Yuriko here. Murderous Cut is pretty gross. So we can put the Delta, then the Cut, and the Daze, because they missed a land drop. Shuffle the library, no. Draw this. And we go to attacks with these guys. We can jam in the Yuriko, bash our opponent for an additional 5. Which will also give us a... Yeah, so we're going to take our opponent's life total down in a big way there. And we've also got ourselves a removal spell for a Murktide, which could obviously roadblock our creatures. And we can't really deal with that with the Fatal Push or anything. So our opponent is probably looking for Murktide at this point. Witherbloom Command. Do I care about this? So what the Daze does here is it stops our opponent from being able to cast a cantrip. But if they fire off a cantrip here, like I believe they're going to... Oh, no, they didn't. Interesting. I was going to say, we would Daze that cantrip if they had one land here. So the top card of our library is a land, so we're going to go and fetch a swamp here. Murktide? Murktide? Oh, Yuriko, that's pretty good still. Alright, so we don't really need to do much. Kind of showing what our deck can do. Sauron's Ransom. Is this worth fighting over? I don't believe it is. Okay. Spell Pierce, we don't really care about. So we can give them a face-up, Lauren Revealed. Do they want this Mystic Sanctuary? Is the question. Mystic Sanctuary is pretty good for next turn. Do we care about next turn, though? This pile is very tempting, but not... This is an interesting pile. We want our opponent to take this pile. This pile is pretty good. Is it too good? I don't know. Like, we don't really care about the Lauren Revealed that much. I think they're going to take this top pile, though. But they might go for the what's in the box, because this doesn't stop them from winning the game right now. Okay, yeah, so they went for the pile that doesn't actually do anything. That's pretty nice. So end step, we will play a little friend, which will give us lethal damage. We know two of our opponent's cards, and they're rubbish. Excellent. We got that. We did our thing. So once again, doing our thing is good. Our opponent is a Life from the Loam deck, but we don't really care about Life from the Loam Wasteland. So there's an argument to say that we don't actually care about bringing in the Sudden Extraction. However, I will bring in the Voidwalker because it's a threat. Back to basics here is reasonable. So Plague Engineer on Orc is pretty good because the only threats they have are Orcish Bowmasters and the Orcs. So I don't think we want Sudden Edict here. It can hit the Murktide though, but I think we are the aggressor and we just want to start beating our opponent down as best we can. I'm not sure this is a Brazen Borrower matchup, although it is a threat. Maybe we're just supposed to go and play all the threats we can play and just have a jolly good time. So we take all of these out. Do we want a Sudden Edict here or do we want Flusterstorm? We can have one Force of Will. No, I like the Sudden Edict still. Our opponent's got very low threats. We need to make sure we can keep Bowmasters off the board. That is kind of important. Alright. We're just going to board into a maximum amount of threats and just get our opponent that way. We're not going to get anyone with this hand, so let's mulligan it. This one seems alright. I think we're going to throw back the fetch. Just play on basics here. Not expose ourselves to the one-off stifle that I have seen in these lists. Underground Sea pass from our opponent. No Thought Seizers or anything spooky like that. Right, let's jam an Outcast. And I'll play an Ornithopter as well. So Pernicious Deed is a card our opponent plays, which can be both good against us and also not do a lot. So it's quite a lot of mana to kill all of our like 4-drop Ninja and 3-drop Ninja and stuff. But they can clean up all of our like Retrofitters and little guys plans. Right, so our opponent probably has an Orcish Bowmaster over there. So I think what we're doing is we're attacking with a Changeling Outcast. If our opponent plays an Orcish Bowmasters, we can either Bowmaster it ourselves or we can play the Brainstorm. I believe our opponent has Dazes in their deck. That's the common Bug Beans plan. Right, they didn't do anything there. Interesting. There's a Misty Rainforest from our opponent. And they're just passing. And we've got our powerful 1910 clock going, so. Right, let's attack with the Outcast. I do want to get this Brainstorm off, but it feels like our opponent is playing around with the Bowmasters over there. We need to get them some action. Give us a nice window. This particular game we're playing is working out quite nicely for our opponent, unfortunately. Alright. So we could try something like a Ponder. And then we can try and answer their Bowmasters using our Bowmasters. But again, we don't need to do that necessarily. I would like to get a little bit deeper into our library. But I don't think we need to make the first action on that. Also, we should be attacking with the Ornithopter as well. To mess with our opponent a little bit. So they've got Hardcast Force of Will here. So we're going to attack with both of our creatures here. This is kind of the downside when you end up with all these Ornithopters jamming in your hand. with this deck. Feels like our window to pick some of these fights has gone by the wayside. Our opponent's got a lot of resources over there. We must have a Orcish Bowmaster at this point. Now we do have a handful of useful spells though. Sauron's Ransom. Still holding up Bowmasters and stuff. Yikes. Leovold isn't great for us. Uro isn't great for us. Like, the Uro is going to go in the graveyard. Yuck. We want to split up the Veil and the Leovold because they're both pretty annoying. Let's do it like this. I think our opponent's just going to outclass us here. We're kind of waiting to draw something that never really occurred. Alright, so they took the pile with the Uro in. Interesting. So we can try and pick a fight with our Bowmasters here when they put the Uro down. But they're not going to do that. I'm just playing this weird game now where we attack them for very little damage and then eventually they get to just kill us. Because they're going to have superior cards because they are a control deck. Alright, it's time to cast this Ponder. And get a Bowmasters out of our opponent's hand. No Bowmasters. We do kind of want some lands here. Let's play this one out. Let's crack this. So we can steal Bowmasters here. Why didn't our opponent Bowmasters in response to that Ponder? Alright. Maybe they don't have it. Maybe they don't. Maybe we've been playing around something we didn't have to worry about. So we'll put a Brainstorm away here and a Ponder. I don't actually think we need those right now. We're just going to be going to the old big factory of guys here. If our opponent's got a counter spell, Retrofitter Foundry is good enough to warrant it. Oh, wow, we're just in. Okay, so our opponent's going to be doing a Pernicious Deed line, I think. That's how they're going to get us. Right, so they're buying back Sauron's Ransom. Our opponent just loves all the cards, which is understandable. Here we go again. Yikes. Let's give them Beanstalk and Uro. Or do we split up the Bowmasters? Like, the Bowmasters is good here. We want them to take this pile. The Deed is real bad for us. So let's try this. Maybe they'll just take the really good cards. Not the card that just completely blows us apart. Because they don't know that it's in that pile. So hopefully they don't take the Deed. Because that's going to be a tough one to beat. They did not take the Deed. Okay, that's good. That was something that I said would be difficult for us to beat. And we managed to dodge one copy of it so far. 2 copies are pretty common. Alright, so they do have a Bowmasters here. What would you like to do with your Bowmasters? They should go to our face with this. Okay, let's turn this into a 4/4 instead. So they don't even get a token here. Ponder from our opponents, sure. Top card of our library is a Ponder. I'm okay with Ponder right now. Let me crack this for a blue source. No, a black source. No, a blue source, and then we play this black source. And I'd like to cast a Ponder here. Oakley dokely. Don't really need this Delta. Just Dismember on top. That's an extra 3 damage. And keep this. Sure, you can ping us for 1. That's fine. Let's go ninja mode. Let's get our friend in. Right, let's just punch our opponent for another 3 damage. Do we want to play another Ornithopter out? That's an interesting choice. I don't think we do. Nope, I think we just jam. Let him have a turn. Okay, we're trying to dodge the other copy of Pernicious Deed in our opponent's deck. Right, we're getting an Uro here. I think this is worth firing off our Bowmasters now. We'll take out their Bowmasters. So our opponent's build has Uro, which is not a standard thing for Bug Beans. It might be like a sideboard thing for additional threats. Fatal Push on our guy. Okay. Our opponent gets an Uro. We have that covered with our Murderous Cut, but this is 3 life, which is annoying. But we do have quite a lot that we're going to be crashing in with in the very near future. Pernicious Deed here would still be terrible for us. That's basically going to be the case for this whole game. Alright, let's make a 4/4. Opponent's going to clean up. They discard the other Uro. A Polluted Delta. Do we want to fire off a Ponder first? I think so. We can also set up our Yuriko to be better. That's an any order in shuffle, I think. Murktide Regent. Alright, so let's get rid of our lands. We don't care about those. Artifact and creature we also don't care about very much. Let's see if we can get rid of this Uro and have a big old bash for lots. A Veil of Summer. That's an interesting one. I think we're going to force through some damage this turn. So we're going to get to draw a card here. Our spell will fizzle, but we get to attack quite nicely here. So we can force through enough damage that we can just attack with a bunch of 4/4s next turn. So Bowmaster. Bowmaster's good. A Murderous Cut. Can't be counted because of their Veil. They're going to take 9 here. 9 is a lot. That's a big number. Right, so we'll play out this. So we have another 4/4 if we need it. Are we supposed to be playing out the Murktide here? Murktide beats the Pernicious D, which is kind of the thing that does beat us here. So I think we're just going to make a large friend. Alright. We have a lot of lethal damages here. They can attack with their Uro, and we don't care. Pernicious Deed, they won't have enough mana to pop it to kill everything, so they're going to have a Deed and another removal spell. Which is certainly possible. But we do get to reload with our Ornithopter, but the Uro can run away with the game if they have the removal spell and the Deed. Okay, we have to sacrifice a non-token creature. So I think that's going to be our Ornithopter here. Feels like they're going to do another one of those. Because if they've got another one of those, we have to lose the Murktide. Right, ponder from our opponent. So if they have double Bowmasters, they can kill our Murktide. If they have double Bowmasters, kill our Murktide. They have 2 blockers, and then they die to... Right, we got Brainstorm as well. So we attack, they block those 2, they only take 1. Yeah, so double Murktide is pretty good. I think we just take the 6 here. Alright, our opponent's on 5 life. Alright, so now we do lose our Murktide. That's a bit of a kick. We found the Deed as well. Our opponent's got a Murktide of their own. Interesting. This isn't lethal though. We should have played out this Ornithopter in our hand. Yikes. I can't remember what's on top of our library. We did Ponder last turn though, so we didn't know the top card of our library, I think. This game's been a long one. So if we attack with everything, they die. We block this, take 5 exactly. Alright, we did get that. That was a bit of a slog, but we put up a win there. We got our engine online for a little while, but then eventually we lost our Yuriko, but it did a little bit of work, and then we put our other engine of Retrofitters into play, and that worked really well. So pretty happy about that. Put a win on the board against one of the very best decks in the format. So aces. Let's go to round 3. Right, we're on the play. Our hand is very slow here. Just an Orcish Bowmaster I don't think is good enough. Let's mulligan this one. This hand I'm down with for sure. So we can keep this, and I think we're going to throw back a non-basic here. Just play off of basics, because we have that ability. It's definitely an appeal to the deck to me. We can just say no to Wasteland. Alright, we have an Ornithopter. Next turn it could become a little ninja friend and start drawing us some cards. And then we can start backing it up with Bowmasters. What sort of removal has our opponent got here? Well, that's the correct thing to do, but it's awkward for us, for sure. So we can jam Bowmasters here, or we can get our Brainstorm going. I think I want to get the Bowmasters down. We're going to do this now just to shut off our opponent's options rather than trying to, get them. Prismatic Ending kind of suggests to me that our opponent is like a slow controller that's going to want to make loads of cantrips and stuff and not going to have things like Daze in it. Force pitching, Force of Negation. Yeah, so Force of Negation usually means control, and the Daze decks tend to be more tempo-y, although Bugstalk is kind of a weird hybrid, so it's a bit different, but this looks more like a classic blue-white X control deck. So it's probably splashing red for things like Forthy or Lingus, but it could be playing multiple colours. It could be anything up to 5 colour here. Right, it's our turn to Brainstorm. I like the Retrofitter Foundry. That can be useful at some point. I think we just bury the cut and the Dismember for now, and we'll get to those later. So Retrofitter Foundry can just give us an army and a can and eventually win the game, but Control decks run things like Prismatic Ending these days, which makes a big difference. Now, there was a time where you could play like non-creature permanents and ride them all the way against control matchups. That is okay. Counterbalance isn't actually that big a deal against us. Our opponent's playing an interesting looking deck over there. Kind of reminds me of Miracles back in the day. What is this? Oh, it's a new card. Oh, I guess new cards are live today. That would be what the update was. Okay, when Meticulous Archive enters the battlefield, surveil 1. Oakley dokley. Interesting. It does have basic types, so this is probably just a singleton that they can fetch. Alright, let's make a friend. Predict. So that surveil is going to let this predict be a draw 2. Now our opponent is displaying to us what is quite clearly a Swords to Plowshares over there. But if we don't do that, our opponent's just going to run away with the game, so let's test them. There it is. Yep, I thought that would happen, but again, we have to test our opponent there, because if we just sit back and just make some more 1/1s, that's not really going to get us anywhere. We do have another Ingenious Infiltrator, but because of our mana situation, it's going to take 2 turns before we get to attack with that. And our opponent could play something pretty scary. Curious to see how they're planning on winning the game. So this might put the Lorien Revealed on top of the library. That the Predict. Interesting. Interesting. I would have expected Lorien Revealed. Okay, so we have our Retrofitter Foundry spam that we're just going to kind of commit to here. Like, we could try a Brazen Borrower, but I'm not excited by that. Let's make a 1/1. There's a Brainstorm from our opponent. Okay. So something we attempt to cast is going to get countered. So we're just on the Infiltrator plan again. It's either good or it isn't. And we get to find out now. Address down. Okay, there's worse things that could have been. So we just hit our opponent for 2 here. But we don't get to draw a card. But hopefully in the future, we can draw some cards off of this. So this is quite hard to answer with some... Okay, they must have drawn that off of the dress down. There's no way you play the dress down there. But they brainstormed last turn, so they should have known it was there. No, they brainstormed the turn before, I think. Okay. Alright, we are obviously quite far behind here. The one thing we had going for us is gone. Maybe Orcish Bowmasters can be our saviour here. And then wind up for a Regent. It's not going to be very big is the problem with this Murktide Regent. So I think we're going to see if we can put Bowmasters into play in our opponent's end step, or in response to a cantrip, and then we can try and untap and deploy a threat. So is our opponent playing a Murktide here? Feels like it, by the way they're paying costs. Yep, we do have an answer to this, so it's not the end of the world. I think we'll try out this Bowmasters. We get to see the top of our opponent's deck via the counterbalance. Murktide Regent. Okay. Let's ping our opponent for 1. Let's cut this. Murktide Regent is a 7-drop, so shouldn't hit the cut, so they're going to have to find an actual answer for this cut. They might not care about protecting it. We don't know the rest of their hand, really. Alright, they have a Force of Will over there. I think we're going to bounce this and shrink it. We know that our Petty Theft is going to resolve through the counterbalance, so I'll have to have an additional answer. Alright, this allows us to push 2 damage through. Unfortunately, they can just make a max size Murktide next turn. And we're going to have to draw like a Sheoldred's Edict or something. Get lost. Destroy target creature, enchantment, or planeswalker. Its controller creates 2 map tokens. They're 1/1. So the 1 mana artifact, sacrifice. This explores. Sure. Huh. There's a destroy as well, which is interesting. Yep. Murktide Regent. Sure. Only a 4/4 because they've got another one that they're about to play and grow them both. But we have a thing for this. We don't get to dismember this in response, which is obviously a shame. We get to attempt to Daze a Murktide Regent, which is maybe not going to work, but it's all we've got. Alright. They had a dress down on top of their library. Yuck. How are we supposed to beat this? We need to draw a removal spell right now, I think. Our Murktide won't be big enough to matter here. I guess we could play a Murktide. That'll be a 5/5, and then Dismember and kill this one. It's not great, is it? Oh, we don't even have enough mana for this, do we? Yikes. Which one is Explore? Imagine putting Explore on a card and expecting a Legacy player to know what that means. I think it's one where you look at the top card of your library. Put it into your graveyard, yes. If it's a land, you get it into your hand. Otherwise, you can surveil it away, I think. What are we looking for here? Yuriko. That's not going to help us here either. I don't think we can win this one. I think we just concede this one. Our opponent is quite far ahead there. So maybe back to basics works here. They had an awful lot of lands, and we're going to need some kind of haymaker to equalize here. I think we want to board in as many threats as we possibly can. That's pretty much a given. Flusterstorm seems good. We probably not on the Force of Wills here. We're just trying to jam threats until that works. Our opponent hasn't shown us threats that Dismember's likely to hit, nor the Fatal Push. I like the Sheoldred's Edict and the Cut. I'm interested in the Sudden Edict as well. The Borrowers don't seem amazing though. They can go. Again, they're threats though, so we probably want to keep these actually. And then what are we trimming here? Maybe we are just cutting Dazes because we think our opponent's likely to be able to play around them. And that gives us what? A Wasteland or a Force of Will. And we'll have a Miser's Force in there. Not confident about this one. This feels like the exact sort of deck that I would like to play into a Ninjas deck, where you just have a bunch of removal and then play a creature that's bigger so that any like leftover ninjas we have can't actually attack. Okay, this hand is... It does the thing that we do. I don't think the thing we do is good enough for this particular matchup, but we have it. Although it only takes like one hit and we're kind of sailing a little bit. Ponder. I do like the Dauthi Voidwalker for later. So next turn we want to try and Yuriko and hit them for 7. So I guess that means we put the Murktide Regent at the bottom, because we're going to draw a card now, draw a card for turn, and then the Yuriko triggers. And that means we're probably looking at putting the C and then the Dauthi. And then we have to play our Ornithopter so we can do our thing next turn. Unfortunately, we don't have the ability to play a Dauthi Voidwalker next turn. Basic Plains. Alright. The jig is very much up here. This is going to be a Swords to Plowshares. Do we play into it? Or do we ignore it and move on with our lives? So, if they kill our Yuriko, we get to stick our Dauthi. Alright, I believe our creature is dying here. But we're doing this so that our Dauthi can live. And, you know, oh wow. I'm going to say there's a chance they don't have the answer there. And we just get to bap our opponent for a load. And that's what happened. Right, let's play out our Ornithopter. Interesting, they did not have access to a removal spell there. So no Prismatic Ending or Swords to Plowshares in our opponent's hand. Brainstorm, sure. We don't know what the top card of our library is, so we could end up killing our opponent very soon. Island, that's probably not the best way to kill the opponent. So I think we are playing out this Underground Sea and then playing out the Voidwalker. Because if they want to react, we at least get something underneath the Voidwalker. Right. Force of Will here. Okay. Attack both, make them think. Come on, Yuriko. Flusterstorm, which we can hold up. So if we'd have played that Voidwalker's second main phase, we'd have been alright. It was the one singleton in our deck that made it better that way around, I think. Terminus. So put this on the stack, we can Flusterstorm it. Alright. We've dodged that. What is next in our future? Big Daddy Murks, as you say. Well, I've got something to say about Big Daddy Murks. I think I would like to Brainstorm first. Interesting. We definitely don't need 2 lands here. It's out. Each opponent sacrifices a non-token creature. crack this because we don't want one of these lands to get hit by our Yuriko. We'll get a swamp so they can't waste us off of Dauthi Voidwalker if they have that. It's unlikely they have Wastelands in their deck, but it's possible. A Brainstorm, sure. Am I playing out this Changeling Outcast? It is a ninja, so I believe the answer is yes. Because then we get 2 Yuriko triggers next turn, which could be enough to win the game. And if they've managed to wrath our board somehow, we do get to reload with a Murktide or a Dauthi, or both. Right, just stuck on 3 lands over there. We can Brainstorm with these triggers on the stack to win the game. Big fan of winning the game. Let's see if this happens though. Alright, so I guess Edict and Murktide on top. Let's ping him. Bam. Okay, that was pretty good. Let's just do that again, I suppose. Kind of kept our opponent off balance just enough. Do I want this Wasteland? That is an interesting choice. I think we are just okay with the back to basics though. Maybe I do like Borrower just because it's a threat. We just need to beat down with stuff here. I'll trim an Ornithopter. Probably not. Trim a Ponder for a Wasteland. Sure, let's try that. Because if we just keep our opponent off of balance long enough. Okay, this is turn to Yuriko. We'll keep that. We've got a nice reload later on. Can put a big lethal threat in after a while. Although we don't put as many cards in our graveyard as a lot of other Murktide decks. Because we're playing to the board so much. Would you like to counterspell my Ornithopter? Would you like to counterspell my 1-mana 1/1? Powerful island cycle in response. Getting a basic island. Okay, so our back to basics line and Wasteland don't seem so great now. But we don't have them in hand, so I guess that means we're about to draw them. That's usually what that means. Prismatic ending on our 1/1, sure. This means no removal spell for the Ornithopter. So we jam this, we can attack with our Ornithopter here. I would like to just get a fresh card, I think. Rather than get our Yuriko stuff going on. Boom. Play out another guy, so next turn we can attack with 2 ninjas, and if we can layer both of the triggers, then every turn we connect our opponent, we just get so much further ahead. Right, so there's the red splash that I suspect our opponent has for things like Blood Moon, Meltdown, possibly 4th Eolingus. Let's crack this now. Get a basic island. So we can just take the hit here and save this as a way of defending our creature. I honestly think that's probably fine. We have the Bowmasters anyway, because if they try and remove this creature, we can then flip it into the Yuriko. And now we've just got a nice end of turn Bowmasters. Plain cycling. Right, that's a reasonable threat. We do have that covered with a Borrower though, if that's what they tap out for this turn. It is. Right, let's say no to this. Oh, excellent. And now they're tapped out. We can cut off a whole bunch of their lands, but it costs us 1 of our lands. Or we could just get a massive hit with our ninjas here. Yeah, I think we're just going to live the dream here. Oh, baby. Put these on the bottom in case we draw something that changes the way we want to stack our deck. 4-drop and 1-drop. Okay, no Brainstorm there. And there's going to be 2. Yeah, okay. So this gets us another basic. Probably an island here. We play out an Ornithopter. And I think we go to clean up and discard a Yuriko here. Or is it a Ponder? Maybe it's a Ponder. The Yuriko we can use to protect our Yuriko if they try and remove it in combat. Do I want to try and Bowmasters this? Yes, I do. Oh, we've just got it all. Just got it all. We're in. So this is going to be an extra couple of points. I've got another Bowmaster to follow up with later as well. So now they've got a choice of, are they trying to remove the Bowmasters so they don't get pinged here? Or are they trying to hold their removal for something scarier like one of our ninjas? Alright. They did not shuffle their library off that Ponder though. So that could mean they set up a Terminus. That would be pretty strong. A Dress Down in the end step, sure. So we're not going to have any ninjutsu abilities this turn, but we're still going to have a bunch of damage And we can still ninjutsu in a creature just to deal damage if we want to. So we've got 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So not quite lethal. But if we have the Bowmasters as well, that is lethal. So I guess we attack with everything. A Brainstorm here. Sure, our Bowmasters doesn't do anything, but we can ping the Bowmasters once the dress down dies. We're just trying to force through the final points of damage here. 2, 4, 6, 7, 8. Opponent goes to 1. Do play out this Ornithopter. It doesn't feel like a great idea. Then we just go to our end step here. Now we don't need to fire off this Bowmasters right away. Our opponent needs to dress down here. Not dress down. Terminus. Sure, you can Terminus. It's good, don't get me wrong, but anyway, I don't really care, it's fine. But this shouldn't matter too much, in theory. Got a Bowmasters we can do some stuff with. We've got reloads on these. Like, we have an unblockable 1/1 and they're on 1 life. That creature is surprisingly good right now. A Ponder from our opponent. So I reckon they're looking for an answer. Let's see if they have one in hand right now. So this has to be a removal spell. Right, I predict. They can't have a Force of Will because they're on 1 life. They can't crack this fetch land, so they're going to be tapped out. Alright, we got the match. We are 2-1 after 3 rounds. Surprisingly, we're doing the work against the control decks, largely off the back of our ninjas being uncounterable when they do their thing, or our Retrofitter Foundry giving us uncounterable threats. That's pretty nice. Let's go to round 4. So we get to Ponder for our land. So I think this is a keep because we can try and put Yuriko in on turn 2. We've also got 2 draw steps before we need to deploy the Yuriko. Alright, we're just going to get reanimated on here. No. Ether Vial. That could be annoying for us. Lots of good creatures. Right, so we're going to go and get ourselves a basic island here. Are we getting a basic island? No. No, I think we do. It's awkward because it means they can waste us off of black. But we need to make sure that we get to do our turn 2 thing. Otherwise, the other stuff we do isn't very good. Alright, so we've got a land. I'm happy about that. Don't really want this Yuriko right now. What about this Borrower and this? So no, I'm pretty happy with the Borrower. I think we can do some good work with that. So let's just deploy an Ornithopter. We can untap, put in a Yuriko or an Ingenious Infiltrator, depending on what we think is going to be good. Infiltrator and Yuriko both attack favourably into Thalia. Oh, our opponent kept to 1 lander. Interesting. Alright, so let's go and get ourselves a basic swamp. Let's attack. I'm going to try this guy out for size first. Containment Priest is going to be pretty good against us if they have them out of the board. You've got a Plough here. That would make keeping a 1-lander a bit more sensible. Obviously, like, Vial is pretty good too. Mother of Runes. Combat damage already has happened. The blocking steps already happened, so we're going to get our card here. Changeling Outcast. Okay, that's a pretty good one. Now, we're not really going to be able to kill their creatures because of the Mother of Runes, but we might be able to tap them down in a weird way. Either Murderous Cut, or if they're trying to block and protect their guy, we can at least kill it in response. So we're going to have some options to possibly use this Murderous Cut. Another Mother of Runes is not very exciting. An Ornithopter. Okay, what is the line of play here? I think we'll attack with both creatures. Right, we're going to get 2 triggers here, and that's going to be pretty good for us. They shouldn't have a 2-mana thing with Ether Vial that gets to blow us out here. We've gone past blocks. All their stuff that kills our creatures tend to be 3. What have I missed here? An Orcish Bowmasters. Okay, so they're going to get the extra ping from the card we draw here. So they can take out our creature. Interesting. Right. Changing Outcast. And we draw a card, they get another ping. So they get to ping down our Ingenious Infiltrator here. Which is sad. Well, that's life sometimes. Alright, let's play out some terrible creatures. And keep this party going. Unblockable guys. So our unblockable 1/1 is a ninja. So if we attack with it, we will get the Yuriko trigger. We can bounce the Ether Vial or bounce the Orc Army token. The Ether Vial makes a lot more sense given our opponent has only 1 land and they have this Mother of Runes to stop our bounce working on creatures. Not really sure there's any good attacks for our opponent here. I suppose, yeah, the Orc army is an okay attack, actually. They've got the Vial on 3, so they can put in other stuff as well. So the threat of killing our Yuriko is quite real. Right, another land is... It is what it is, right? So we will have a little crack with our Changeling Outcast. Right, here comes the Ether Vial activation. If we bounce this in response, it uses the last known information. Okay, so they have a Skyclave Apparition. Okay. Let's petty theft this away. Buy ourselves a little bit of time here. And then we're probably jamming another Outcast. Probably holding up the Murderous Cut in case they ever tap their Mother of Runes for some reason. Seems unlikely. Right, opponent, what are you up to? Find yourself a second land yet? Or do we still get to play this game where I got to try and beat you before you get to the cards out of your hand? Okay, you found a second land. It's probably just going to be playing the port. Playing the Vial. There it is. So we've got a cut available that we don't really get to use. Our opponent doesn't have great attacks here because of our Yuriko. We have an unblockable creature that does stuff. And we can also deploy the Brazen Borrower soon. Alright. Big hits, big hits. Dismember, that's not a bad hit. I don't think we're deploying the Ornithopter here. This Bowmaster and Mother of Runes is a pretty awkward combo for us to deal with. Alright, so they're starting to mount some counters up here. They can attack with 2/2/2s if they want to. They decided against it. Alright, let's cast our Borrower. We can double up the removal on the Mother of Runes if we want to. But we kind of have the board that's doing stuff right now. So let's just jam some little guys at them. And hope to win before the Vial gives them the mana they need. Right, Yuriko trigger, what have you got for us? A Brainstorm. Not an exciting Yuriko trigger, unfortunately. Let's play Retrofitter Foundry here and just start churning out friends. Alright, either Vial putting in another Mother of Runes, or are they just testing us? Alright, another Mother of Runes. Recruiter of the Guard. That's a pretty nice find for them. So what is that going to actually achieve, though? An Orcish Bowmasters. Yep, that's a pretty good one. Does some work here. Right, let's make a 4/4 that's colourless, so Mother of Runes can't do anything about it. And let's untap this. And make another 4/4. A Daze. Not that exciting. Right, let's slam him with some friends. Right, we're going to see this Bowmasters, I believe, which takes out either our... I think it probably has to be the Borrower. Oh, okay. They're more scared of the Yuriko trigger. Interesting. But we're putting down quite a bit of damages here. So they're going to trade off against one of these constructs. I imagine this Mother of Runes going out of the bus is pretty handy for us when we've got 2 removal spells in hand. But I think just piling on the damage here is where I want to be. Let's play another Ornithopter. So we've got another 4/4 in the bank. And let's pass the turn. We're not going to get any more Yuriko triggers here, but hopefully Borrower plus Ornithopter is enough. So we've got 2 4/4 constructs coming in. And if their Skyclave Apparition ever dies, we get a 1/1, which isn't nothing. A Flicker Wisp. Let's make a 1/1 here. And then we will counterspell this by bouncing this island. And then we still got enough mana to untap our Retrofitter Foundry and make another 4/4. It might have been better to put in with an Ether Vial, but we'll see. Our opponent can get an attack in if they want to, but that's not really what this game is about. Alright, let's crack this. Go and get ourselves another non-basic is fine. Let's untap our Retrofitter Foundry. Let's make another 4/4. And so these colourless creatures are doing quite the work for us, I would say. The Brazen Borrower is interesting. Are we firing that off now? I think we play out our land first. I guess we want to see what the trick is here. So we're going to bounce the Vial and see what they put in. And then maybe we can actually leverage these double removal spells for something. Right, here it comes. Just another Flicker Wisp. It is another Flicker Wisp. I would like to flicker our little friend here. Sure. That is what it is. So our opponent would have to have Solitude in hand. So let's try and kill this. I'm expecting this to get Mother of Runes, and then we Murderous Cut over the top and swing for lethal. Alright, we got the game. It's a little bit grindy, but we did get there. So, what is our plan for this particular matchup? I would like some removal. So that's the Plague Engineer and the Sudden Edict. The Dauthi Voidwalker gets to ignore their blockers, which I think is important for this matchup. Dress Down has some interesting text here. Can stop some of their weird blinky shenanigans and ruining our day, but it's not really for this matchup, but it probably is fine. There are options like Null Rod to try and stop Ether Vial and some other stuff kicking along, but I don't think that's where I want to be. So, how are we fitting in these cards? So what in this matchup doesn't feel amazing? Are we thinking about just cutting a bunch of counter spells? Possibly. I guess we can keep in one Force of Will, or we could keep in a Wasteland for getting out from underneath ports, or stopping Karakas, or taking them off of black mana. Alright, I'm sold. Let's do that. Not liking the mana situation too much here. Like, we're going to kind of be pressed into doing a turn 1 Brainstorm if we keep this hand. But that comes off of a basic island, or we go into an underground sea and it kind of falls apart for the Wasteland, so I think I'm going to mulligan this. Alright, this is better, but again, not that exciting. So we're probably throwing away a Delta here. We need black, and we do want to play on basics where possible. Right, no Ether Vial on turn 1 from our opponent. That's pretty good. Oh, second main phase Hipster with the Mother of Runes. Fair enough. Okay, our hand just got a lot better. We have two options depending on what happens this turn cycle. So we can either try and stick an Ingenious Infiltrator, or we can stick the Dauthi Voidwalker. Both of which are pretty good. And Orcish Bowmasters is better though. Yikes. Goodbye, friend. So our opponent's quite far ahead on board here. This means we are on the Dauthi Voidwalker plan. Can't block this. Source to Plowshares, that's pretty bad news. Gonna take a bash for 2 here. Alright, we might be scooping this one up soon so we've got time to play the game 3. But we'll see. So our Dismember doesn't look... Sorry, our Ponder doesn't look great here, but I think we still have to fire it off. Otherwise, what are we doing? It puts cards in our graveyard for Murktide, which is something that can actually outclass. Okay, we want these cards. So, what order do we want these cards? If our Changeling Outcast dies, we're going to want this Retrofitters. So, we're going to draw this next turn. So, put the Retrofitters on the second one down, and then this guy. Yep, you can ping us, make a bigger guy, give us a bad time. The usual. Here comes Changeling Outcast. Right, we're pretty shields down here. Plow, that's pretty bad news. Doesn't even put a creature in our graveyard to make our Murktide cheaper. So if we can take like little hits and then eventually get there with a Murktide, that should be big. But it's not going to be as big as it would be in other decks because our setup isn't such that... Oh no, what is this? Is this Plague Engineer? Our setup isn't such that we put a load of cards in the graveyard quite as much as like the Delver decks with all the Channeler putting things in and the Mistress Baubles and just the ability to fill the graveyard quickly. March of Otherworldly Light. Okay. We get a 2/2 creature, a 1/1 creature here. If they attack with the Orc Army, we get to attack. Okay. Because our 1/1 can trade. And if it doesn't trade, maybe it becomes an Infiltrator. Alright, let's see if it can become an Infiltrator. Now this will give them another Bowmaster's ping. But we're going to need some more cards to get out of this one. A Changing Outcast. That's okay-ish. The difference between the Infiltrator and the Yuriko here is substantial. Okay, so they've got quite a large friend. We can make a 4/4 Murktide, which isn't really good enough to be honest. We need it bigger. If both of our creatures attack, we draw 2 cards, and then the Murktide starts snowballing in a big way. Right, Changeling Outcast can't chump block. It can't be blocked, but also can't block itself. We're going to see here. And keep tapping Plague Engineer mana. Right, Brainstorm, that's not going to help us out here. We attack with both of these, we're going to draw some cards, and the Bowmaster is going to do some real damage to us. I don't think we're winning this one. I think we're just going to save our time and have another game here. So the Dazes get much better on the draw, on the play, sorry. So I'm more into having these. I don't think I want the dress down for this one. I like the pushes. The Ponders and Brainstorms can be a liability, but I think they're still where we need to be. Are we trimming any of our like Ornithopter type stuff? I don't think so. What are we cutting here? Cutting the Wasteland to make room for the Daze. Obviously Wasteland and Daze are friends, but we only have the one. We need to cut one thing here. Is it the Borrower because we've just put other removal in? Sure, I can buy that. Right, this is the 4/4 on turn 1. That's pretty good. Alternatively, we can do the Ponder, but we can kind of do that next turn so we get more looks at stuff. Let's play the Foundry and the Ornithopter. And let's see if we can just turn a 4/4 sideways a bunch. Alright, they're cracking a Marsh Flats. And we're going to see an Ether Vial here. Sure. So this gives us a 4/4 to attack with. Alright, Murderous Cut. It's not too shabby here. Are we firing off the Ponder or the Brainstorm? Ponder does give us more looks for land number 2. We found land number 2. We also found a Daze, which I'm kind of interested in here. But we only get one of these, so I guess we take our Prismatic Vista and be happy about it. We can draw the Daze potentially next turn, but in the face of this Ether Vial, maybe not the strongest. We're quite likely to just crack this Vista for a swamp and cast a Dismember. White. Is this like a Thalia? A Stoneforge Mystic, sure. We can delete this creature. A Cauldron Complete, sure. So to be mana efficient, we probably want to delete it now so that we can do more stuff on our turn in a second. It's going to get our basic swamp because we're going to want to have access to black mana here. Alright, let's see if we can continue our construct beatdown here. Orcish Bowmasters is an excellent draw for us. So if we cast a Brainstorm here, we're just looking for any land. We did not miss. We do not need additional Retrofitter Foundries here. Do we need this Murktide Regent is the next question. We don't have the mana for this region, although we can go and get it here. Yeah, sure, I can buy with that. We've got a bit of overlapping delve spells here. Let's crack this, get ourselves an island, and pass. So if they put a Mother of Runes in here, we just ping it straight up. They did not put it in. Excellent. Good news. So we can either ping down one of their guys, or we can make a 1/1 guy. Now, if our opponent's got things like Opposition Agent, we're incentivized to fetch in our own turn, especially when our opponent's tapped out and stuff like this. Okay, Wasteland. Because we're fetching basics, we don't really care about what they're doing. Alright, let's make a friend. Okay, they're going to Bowmasters this down now. That's fine. Yep, we don't have the mana to sack it, so they don't get a 1/1. Let's go attacks. So there could be an Opposition Agent here, so I need to be careful about how I fetch and do stuff here. Right, let's get rid of some instants. And make a large creature. This is a 6. They haven't been able to kill this construct, so maybe they can't kill this Murktide. There is an Orcish Bowmasters. Let's crack this now when there's no Opposition Agent shenanigans. We'll get ourselves another swamp. And they have a Bowmasters here. This is one more chump block for the chump block gods. We're just trying to dodge removal on our big creatures at this point. We can cast a Murderous Cut on our next turn if we need to. We can make a 1/1 and trade it with one of their guys. We can ping down one of their guys with a Bowmaster. We've got options. Flicker Wisp is something we get to kill with the Bowmasters. So I'm incentivized to hold the Bowmasters until they play a creature to kill with it that is more worthy than the creatures they've got in play right now. Also, we're representing Force of Will here by having 2 cards in hand. Our opponent doesn't know we've boarded them out. Alright, let's make a 1/1. Alright, I want to tap our island. I will make a 1-1. We'll go to attacks. We'll send them all in, because this current board, that is A-OK with me. What comes out of the vial? Flicker Wisp is probably the worst thing to come out of this. Recruiter of the Guard. What does this find? Another Bowmasters? I'm trying to think what they would have that they could find. Solitude. Okay, so they found a Solitude. So that can deal with our Murktide. They probably want to hard cast that Solitude as well. Going for a chump block and taking 6 here. Okay, I think we still hold up this Bowmasters. We know 2 of our opponent's cards. One of them, pretty good. The other one is unlikely to do anything this game. Right, there's a Caracas. Here's the hard cast Solitude. It's going to gain our opponent a... Sorry, it's going to gain us a chunk of life, which is something. It's going to give our opponent quite a bit of breathing room here. Right, let's add to the board. Ping down one of their guys. Board control is the name of the game here. Flicker Wisp off of the vial would be Savage. I think they block differently if they have a Flicker Wisp there before, anyway. So we've got this land. We can do a Murderous Cut here. I think that is worth doing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Flicker Wisp here, Savage, but again, I think if they had it, they would have done that already. Attack with all creatures here. So our opponent has to chump block here, otherwise they die. And then we just continue pumping out our 1/1s. Alright, nothing off the vial there. Our opponent's going to be at 2 life, staring down a bunch of 1/1s and a 4/4. So I believe we have what we need. We can turn our servo into a flyer if we think a flyer is going to be more relevant to us than just another 1/1 body here. But I think just an additional body is more likely to win us the game next turn. And Windswept Heath, not a land they particularly want to crack. Let's make another friend. This beats Bowmaster by having an additional body in play. A Ponder. I don't think we need that right now. Alright, it's got to be good. So another Solitude here. That is pretty good. So if they block the servo token, they die here. Right, they correctly blocked the right creature. So life total will remain the same. Right, let's cast a Ponder here. But we're going to find someone that would have been able to deal with this now. Ornithopter is fine. And then we can put the Ponder underneath it. Play this out. Play out another one of these. This gives us access to making another 1/1 as well as making a 4/4. Our opponent's getting pretty close to putting this Cauldron Complete into play. They've still got 2 mystery cards in hand. Okay, they've got 1 mystery card in hand. Just a Batterskull. We have Batterskull beaten because we just make 2 flying tokens here. Right, our opponent's cracking this. So if they go Batterskull here and attack... Okay, so just making a Cauldron, which doesn't impact the board in a meaningful way right now. So they have to attack with their Solitude. Right, they didn't attack with a Solitude. So let's make a Flying Thopter here. 2 lethal attackers. Our opponent's got 1 mystery card in hand. Flicker Wisp can win in the game here. So we'll be pondering first. Trying to find an answer to Flicker Wisp. Sudden Edict. Is Sudden Edict a card that does anything here? We get rid of one of their guys straight up. And then we're kind of stuck with this Changing Outcast in hand. I think that is still acceptable here. So if we... I think we attack with 2 Thopters. They might just not have anything. Okay, they didn't have anything. If they have a Flicker Wisp there, if they Flicker Wisp our guy, then what do we do then? We turn it into a 4/4, and then we're still reasonably okay. But what they're probably going to do is put this on the Solitude next turn, which becomes a bit of an issue for us. Yeah, okay, well we got there. So we are 3-1 going into the final round, looking for the tasty 4/1. So our opening hand here is 4/4 town, really, which is fine. But we've got interaction for creature matchups, we've got interaction for combo matchups, we've got a threat that kind of does our thing, and we can play on basics here. So I think this hand is a keep. It's not a very exciting keep, but we're on the draw. If we find like a ninja, we can all of a sudden start doing ninja stuff from turn 2 onwards. I believe. A Mox Diamond. If this is lands, this is something we probably want to counter, but if it's green-white depths, we don't want to counter it. So it's kind of an awkward one. Because we're not going to get many good targets for our Force of Wills in the lands matchup. In the Green-White Depths matchup, we have things like Knight of the Reliquary and Green Sun Zenith and stuff like that we want to hit. A Presagio. And a Wasteland. And a Sphere of Resistance. Alright, this is something I would like to counterspell. Changeling Outcast. Boom. The little changeling that could. The Tabernacle. How very rude. Exploration, sure. Shadow Spear. Alright, we will keep our creature around. An Ornithopter, you say. We'll play this out. We'll get ourselves an island here. We'll play the Retrofitter Foundry and the Ornithopter. So what we're going to do is we're going to pay for the... Well, depending on what our opponent does, we could either pay for both, or we could just pay for this, and instead of letting the Ornithopter die, we turn it into a 4/4. So we have some options depending on what our opponent's up to. If we think bashing with a 4/4 is going to be better than anything else we're doing with our mana, then I'm going to turn it into a 4/4 on our opponent's end step and just start making some damages happen. Alright. Give me 4/4s, please. Yes. Yes. So we got some damages coming across. Play this out. We're going to get ourselves a basic swamp. Changeling Outcast. This can also become a 4/4. So we can be beaten down for 9 next turn. I'm not sure what our opponent's hand was a keep for. The Sphere is fine, but you need to have some sort of engine with lands. Like, just having an Urza Saga is fine, or a Life from the Loam, but you need something a bit more than this. So as it stands, we're just going to be paying and killing their stuff, killing their face. Right, an Ancient Tomb. Oh, I clicked through that wrong. That's annoying. We're supposed to have a 4/4 here. Whoops. Classic slip of the finger there. I've been recording this one for a little while, so well, that's a good excuse, but it's an excuse nonetheless. Okay, let's bash for 6 here. So we still have lethal next turn, but we effectively missed 3 damage this turn. A Crop Rotation. Sure. Just Urza Saga. We have that kind of covered. Yeah, so there's the Urza Saga. So if their plan is just to make a construct and block with it, we can dismember that construct, let one of our guys die and just beat for 4, and that's enough. Oh, sorry, beat for 8. So we basically just need the last card of our opponent's hand to be blank. So please play out a land. Excellent. Okay, we have this game, I believe. I can't see any way. Well, I guess I could misclick here again. All right, let's press the 1 button, not the 2. Okay, so let's turn this guy into a 4/4. Let's pay for this one. Let's pay for this one. Let's turn this guy into a 4/4. We'll not pay for this. Go attacks. They'll make a guy. I will kill the guy. Goodbye. Construct taken. Alright. A nice clean game against lands there. I don't think our opponent should have kept their hand, if I'm being perfectly honest, but I'll take it. I would like some Dauthi Voidwalkers. I would love some Back to Basics. Wasteland is also pretty good here. Null Rod has text. So Extraction, pretty useful here. Sudden Edict. Plague Engineer can kind of do some stuff sometimes. Like, it trades with a construct, but whether or not that's what we want to do, I'm unsure. Force of Will, I don't really like these matchups, but they do have some cards that kind of just scream out to be forced, like the Spheres. Dismember, it did something there, but it's not actually very good, to be honest with you. Bowmaster is pretty poor here, so we can take those out. The Fatal Push can kill a construct. That's fine. We want the Borrowers. We want our Edict here. We have 1 cut to make. I don't really want to be left holding all these Ponders. Do I need a Murderous Cut in here? I don't think we do. On the play, we can consider Dazes to stop turn 1 Spheres, but we care less about turn 1 Sphere, to be honest. This is kind of slow, but I think it's acceptable. If our opponent's got like a big plan. So now we know their lands. Are we supposed to hit this Mox Diamond? I don't think so. There's definitely an argument for it though. But a 7-card hand, the chance of them having something else that produces green mana is quite high. 3 mana for a choke. Okay. I would not like my opponent to have a choke. Murktide Regent seems pretty a-okay to me. Let's put a Retrofitters into play. That gives us options moving forward. We can make 1/1s or we can brainstorm into something better. We'll just see how the game pans out. So our opponent probably kept their hand on the back of just choke being good. Ornithopter. That does change what we're doing here. So we can cast this Brainstorm. Crop rotation. Okay. What have I missed here? There's a Sag. Okay, they're just trying to get this done when we're less likely to have counter spells in hand. Understood. Right. This is our blue card for Force of Will, I guess. Interesting. I guess we'll just put Infiltrator. Oh, I guess Infiltrator is kind of bad here, isn't it? Because we don't have the black mana yet. Yikes. Okay, I guess we put the Edict on top. I think our opponent wins this game. Because we don't have black mana. Yeah, that Brainstorm, not a good one for us. We've got a 4/4. But our opponent's going to have a 4/4 at the end of their next turn. That might even be bigger if they put a Shadow Spear on it. So not a big fan of that one. Our opponent is possibly playing the white build with Source to Plowshares. Yep, here it comes. We're not winning this game if we don't do this. We're going to draw this Ingenious Infiltrator. Oh, sorry, the Sheoldred's Edict. We bash here. We're one card shy of putting a Murktide into play, unfortunately. Our opponent does get to make a guy here and then make some more guys on their turn. And then can definitely get out of hand. We'll make a 1/1 before they Pithing Needle it. Just let our opponent have their turn here. I think I'd rather they Pithing Needle this than get Shadow Spear. Shadow Spear is bad news for us. Because this can give them a 5/5 right now. With lifelink, which is definitely better than what we're doing. Top card of our library is an Ingenious Infiltrator, so that's completely blank. Yep, there's a Shadow Spear. So that's the worst option for our side of the table. Yep, so now they've got a 6/6 because they had that Mox Diamond instead of a land. Yep, they just start crashing here. What is our solution to winning this game? It's not Ingenious Infiltrator, that's for sure. So we can block the 5/5 with the Servo token, turn it into a Thopter. That's a reasonable play. But the 6/6 is just going to crash. They don't really need to do anything else here. I think what they've got on board is enough to win this game. But we could find some stuff to get out of it. Black mana would obviously be a big help. Yeah, they correctly are attacking with just the one guy. Next turn we can double block this. But that might not be enough. We would like to make a Thopter here. So we can have 8 power to block with next turn. So a Black Source would be great here. An Ornithopter. Like, we're playing it. We can play the Ornithopter, turn it into a 4/4, and then play Murktide Regent. Okay, that was a pretty good turn. This is going to be a 6/6, so it can potentially trade with a construct, or we're probably just going to put 2 constructs in front of their construct. But it can hold back their other construct. So this is pretty nice. And then if we untap with the Retrofitters one more time, we can put another 4/4 into play. What is this? Force of Vigor. That's going to be devastating. Goodbye 4/4s. They might take out 4/4 and the Retrofitters. But I think the 2 4/4s is the best way to push here. But it depends what the rest of their hand is. Alright. I would describe that as very bad news for us. Here is a plow on our Murktide. Yep. So, how do we get out of this one? I guess we take 11. Opponent is on many, many life points right now. There is our Black Source. We don't get to choose which creature they sacrifice here. This isn't enough. If we play this out, attack, get the Infiltrator, what can we draw for 1 blue mana? Nothing. Nope. We weren't a million miles away there. Our opponent had to have the plow there as well, but okay. Do I want to do anything differently? So Daze is something I'm somewhat interested in, especially now we know they've got this choke. So what would I like to play these Dazes instead of is the question. Maybe we don't care that much about the Life from the Loam. Maybe we're just caring about there as a saga. I like Back to Basics, Borrower. I guess Yuriko's a little bit weak here because they have Caracases they can dig out very easily. And maybe we're just trimming a cantrip here. Let's try that. Okay, I like my hand here. We have turn 2 Dauthi Voidwalker into turn 3 Back to Basics. So we shut off Life from the Loam pretty effectively here. Is Exploration what we're fighting over? I don't think it is. I think it's a Plough or a Clutch crop rotation. Them starting with a basic forest is a little bit rude, to be honest with you. Do they not play another land? Are they second main phase hipster? They are second main phase hipster, sure. Would like to find a basic black source here. Not find a basic black source. Swamp, Underground Sea. Let's play our friend here. This card is going to be pretty good here. They might Wasteland now, so it's not in the void. Alright, I decided not to. So we can pitch the Brainstorm to the back to base to the Force of Will. I don't think we can get rid of this back to basics. It's going to be hopefully absolutely clutch in this matchup. Although the Brainstorm is something that can maybe find us another land. Is the Mox Diamond a thing with counter spelling? I don't think so. Like the actual count of mana isn't the problem here. Okay, so Dark Depths in Exile. 3 mana. Choke. Okay, so we say no to choke. Our back to basics isn't actually that good here, but it does shut down their Wasteland at the expense of our Underground Sea. It shuts down one of their lands. That doesn't even feel that good. Honestly, I think I'd rather just get this other creature down. Let's just get the guaranteed 3 damage. Now, Yuriko can draw us cards, but I think I'd rather have guaranteed damages. And we doubly shut off Life from the Loam here. Right, we'll attack. If they have a Plough, we can turn it into a Yuriko. Alright. Okay, they've done it in the correct phase here. So we don't get to turn it into a Yuriko. Right, they're giving us the option to play another Dauthi Voidwalker here, so we'll take it. Very reluctant about using this Wasteland, our opponent. A crop rotation. Okay. We have a Wasteland we can go and fetch with a Dauthi Voidwalker now because of the crop rotation. So we might be able to interact with our opponent in an interesting fashion. We have a Swords to Plowshares as well, so the Merit Lage combo won't beat us, but it'll gain them a lot of life that we then have to whittle down with only 1/3/3 or 3/2. They got themselves a Thespian Stage here. So they'll play Dark Depths and another mana source. That kind of makes it awkward to attack with our Dauthi Voidwalker. Crop rotation. Alright, our opponent is just going for the combo kill here. Well, they might not. They might be going for something else. Okay. So we get to... We might drop this back to basics this turn. But we have a Plough. They know we have a Plough as well, which is interesting. They've gone for this option. Love to draw a Brazen Borrower. That would be good. Or one of our Edicts. We've got some pretty good options here. Okay, I will take the Edict. No to 2020s in your area. I'll not be hoisted by my own petard. Alright, our opponent's had enough. And we come away with a pretty impressive 4-1 at the end of the day. I think this deck performed a little bit better than I necessarily thought it was. Ninjas is kind of one of those decks where things can definitely go wrong for you, like we saw in the Delver matchup. But I like some of the stuff we've got going on in here. So let's just talk about this deck and what I liked about it and what I think works. So I am a big Wasteland fan, as you all probably know. This deck doesn't have Wastelands. However, by not having the Wasteland, it gives us the room for having some proper removal in the deck, the Bowmasters, and some Murktide Regent. So these are the sort of spaces that are fighting normally for Wasteland. And if you think about how the games we're playing go, we are not as much of a tempo deck as you would think. Like, we can do, like, you know, make some 4/4s really early and smash our opponent down. You know, that's all well and good. But the actual Ninja plan tends to be we're trying to grind some card advantage and just kind of have this mid-rangey plan that just gets there. So by not having the Wastelands, we have more access to cards that actually help us with that plan. You know, so we have the interaction, we have something to go big at the end. when our creatures are no longer good enough. You know, if these cards are getting blocked, we can then just stick a massive guy. We've also got Bowmasters, which is just a great card. Don't really need to talk about that anymore. And, you know, having the 2 borrowers instead of just 1 is also really nice too. So I think whilst I was skeptical about not having Wastelands in the main deck, I think that was actually the thing that made quite a big difference for us. So thumbs up for that one, I would say. Also, the Murktide, big fan of having these. They definitely did some real work for us. And by only having 2 of them, it means that, you know, like I said several times, we're not filling our graveyard that much, right? And we do also have another Delve card here. So we're not putting too many cards into our graveyard sometimes. So having more than 2, I think, would be a liability. But I think the Murderous Cut is also an interesting one. Maybe this could be like another Sheoldred's Edict or something. Although having a pinpoint removal spell is nice. We can't really have the push and the Dismember. So maybe changing the cut up so that we have more cards in our graveyard for Murktide Regent might be slightly better. So that's kind of, I'll pull that to the front here. That's kind of one of the things I would consider tweaking in this deck. But the rest of it, honestly, felt pretty smooth. Like, we executed the various game plans. You know, we had those Retrofitters games that just took over the game. We had a couple of Ninjas games where we just drew all the cards and our opponent had a real bad time. And we had one where we were sort of trading resources, controlling our opponent a little bit, and then just slamming a big Murktide and just doing sort of the classic Delver B plan, I guess you call it. So, yeah, I was quite impressed with some of that stuff, to be honest. And the Wasteland in the sideboard, that was something I was a little bit skeptical of, but I think it made sense in terms of when we brought it in. Whether or not it should be another back to basics, I'm not sure. Although being able to possibly sacrifice a Dauthi Voidwalker for a crop rotation to get a Wasteland was a nice play that was available to us. Obviously, we had better plays at the end of the day, but it was certainly a nice one that we had an option for. The Sudden Edict, the split second on this, was actually relevant. That surprised me. I was expecting this to be a worse Sheoldred Edict, but we did actually have split second being useful. I think it's pretty good against Delver. Like we did lose that matchup, but I think it was pretty potent at just saying we definitely get rid of this. We don't have to mess around with anything. So that was quite nice too. What I will say is the Delver matchup felt a little bit tricky because they're doing kind of similar things, especially the 4-color build, because that has a lot more card advantage than normal because it's usually running 4 of the Questing Druid and they board in Narsets out of the sideboard, so they actually have ways of, you know, matching the card advantage we're doing. So if we try and play this control-y game, they can actually beat us at that. And if we try and play the aggro game, you know, they can beat us at that too because they've got Delvers and Dragon's Race Channelers, and then they've got the Druids that get bigger, and obviously Murktide at the top end, and they're a better Murktide deck than we are in terms of actually casting this early and large. So a little bit awkward on that front, I think. And I think Delver is a matchup that we are potentially going to struggle with sometimes, but we did have that game where we just overran them. Like, they have to have the interaction to stop our engine. As soon as our engine starts up and running, then we can pull away. So it's not like, oh yeah, we're definitely going to lose that one, but their cards on average are going to end up mattering more because they're not running a synergy deck as much. Like, they're running a load of good cards that happen to have synergy, like the synergy between things like Murktide Regent and Dragon's Race Channeler, that sort of thing. So they, you know, they have interlocking pieces that are just good cards. So I don't think there's any shame losing to a Delver deck. I don't think there's any real changes I would make to the sideboard. Maybe the dress down, but that's obviously going to help us in the Doomsday matchup. This could equally be something like a Force of Negation. I think that's also fine. We're also quite light on ninjas. I've played a few ninja decks in the past. I've played one with Mooncircuit Hacker, but I think obviously that's an X1 and we don't want to be in that anymore. So the donor whose list this is correctly identified that having the X3 bodies of ninjas is probably where you want to be, and you don't need to go any more than that. I have even considered playing the weird 4-mana rat ninja that's like lets you just play a bunch of cards off of your opponent's. I think there's 2 rat ninjas that are kind of interesting, and I can't quite remember what they do. One of them lets you play cards from the top of your opponent's library. Like, I think you get to look at 2 and take 1, and you can cast it for life instead of mana, which could be pretty gross. And there's like another one that's like a card advantage one that's like 1 black. But again, it's a legend, and I understand not wanting to go too deep into legends when we already have 4 here. So I can understand that. And obviously, if you want to play that, you've got to have another slot, and that means we have less cards. So we've got more payoff cards that depend on having some of our, you know, lower end. So maybe you can say, okay, we have more payoffs, so it makes these cards better. but then we have more cards that aren't good without these. Because these cards can do minimal things on their own. So like Changeling Outcast on its own can attack and do some stuff, right? So it's not completely a blank piece of cardboard. But if we have like a 4-mana ninja we can never cast, then that is a blank piece of cardboard. So it's interesting in how you evaluate the setups and the payoffs. And I think the balance here is quite nice. Like Retrofitters, given time, is also a setup for these cards. And a, a setup for itself and can kind of get there. I was very surprised how well we managed to beat control decks today. That's something that I was not necessarily expecting, but that's where the ninja side of the deck comes in quite nicely. But also, they have to counter our rubbish like 0 and 1 drops. And if they don't, then we can start turning them into better things like ninjas or Retrofitter Foundry. If our opponent doesn't have the exact right answers, then all of a sudden it falls apart and then we start pulling ahead. So instead of the control deck being the one that ends up with more cards in hand, it's the aggressive deck that does, and that's a bad situation for them. So yeah, I was pretty happy playing this one. I do enjoy ninjas. I think it's got some interesting mechanics in it. I would like to explore some of the weirder ninjas at some point, but finding time to build the deck aside from all the other decks I build for the channel and stuff is a difficult one, especially when I'm not really anywhere approaching a ninjas expert about ratios to payoffs and things. It is a shame that Mooncircuit Hacker isn't the way, but this feels like a perfectly valid direction to take ninjas in. Like we finished with a 4-1, which is a great record for ninjas. And I think if you put the time and effort in and play enough leagues, then you can probably get a trophy with this deck and, take it to some tournaments. This wouldn't necessarily be my recommendation for a big tournament, but I think if you took it to a big tournament, it wouldn't be the most embarrassing deck you could take. That's probably the Ley Lines deck, right? But anyway, I think this deck, we're playing a bunch of good stuff in it, which helps. We're a nice synergy deck. Yeah. Play some ninjas. I think this is a build that's adapted to Bowmasters quite nicely, which is something I haven't seen other ninjas decks do. And I think breaking away from the sort of orthodoxy of running the 4, Wasteland has actually innovated a little bit of space in this deck to try some new things. And I hope you enjoyed this one as much as I did. It's quite a long lead today, so I'm going to leave you with that. So I hope you enjoyed this one. And if you would like a donation deck on the channel, you can either join my Patreon in the donation tier and get regular ones, or just contact me on Discord or in the comments or whatever. And we can set you up with a one-off for like 15 quid or whatever. I think it's what I charge, so not exactly big money. And it really helps support the channel, and I do appreciate it. And I do love to see what you come up with. I get some weird ones every now and then, so I do appreciate people looking into spaces that I may not have looked into myself. All right, we are done for the day, so thank you so much for watching. Remember to like and subscribe, and goodbye. If you'd like to support me in the channel, please check out my Patreon. It has a free guide to budget turbo depths, as well as 3 tiers of support. A low-cost one that enters you into my monthly raffle for a free donation deck on the channel, a mid-tier subscription that gives you access to my detailed turbo depths guide that is updated every month, as well as regular articles, and lastly, the higher tier gives you all of the above, as well as a monthly donation deck for my channel. If you're interested in supporting the channel this way, please check out the link in the description.